We are gonna have a family dinner and I'm in charge of bringing bread. So I'm gonna make us some garlic knots. I make my garlic knots using my pizza dough recipes, so that's the base that we're gonna start with. So I'm making enough pizza dough to make these garlic knots and then to also have a pizza dough for pizza later on. The ingredient amounts that I'm gonna be telling you are not gonna match what I'm putting in the bowl. I'm gonna tell you how much to use to make one pizza dough, and then you can feel free to double it or whatever you want later. Sand mixture, but you don't have to, you can knead with your hands. And into the bowl, we're gonna add warm water. I have whey on hand, so I like to use whey in place of water. It makes it just a little bit better. So add your 1 cup, and try not to make a mess. Add 1 cup of warm water. You want it to be around 110 degrees, no hotter than that because then it will kill your yeast. Next is your yeast. You're gonna add just 1 tablespoon, and then you just sprinkle that on top of your warm water or whey. Next is sugar, and that's also gonna be 1 tablespoon. So you've got your yeast, warm water or whey, and your sugar, and you're gonna stir that up and you're gonna let it sit in the bowl and balloon. All right, once it balloons, we're gonna add our olive oil and you're just gonna do another tablespoon. You're gonna wanna attach your dough hook. Start your mixer, and now we're gonna add our flour. I just do all-purpose flour for my pizza dough. How I typically do it is I add 2 cups of flour, and then once it starts to combine a little bit more, then I'll go in with about another ½ a cup. You want it to not be sticky. So I'm making garlic knots, and then I'm gonna make this pizza crust so we can have actual pizza for dinner. And then my husband makes a good breakfast pizza, so I'm gonna have pizza crust for that too. All right, and before it gets fully incorporated in there, we're gonna add our salt, and it's just 1 teaspoon of salt. All right, if you're doing this by hand, then you're gonna wanna knead this for probably about 8 to 10 minutes. And if not, you're just gonna let the machine do the work and get it to the point that it's not sticking on the bowl. It's at this point that I'm gonna add my extra ½ a cup of flour. And when the side of the bowl is clean and it's pulling away, then you know you're good. All right, I'm just gonna oil up this bowl and then transfer my dough in here for it to rise. Should come out your bowl pretty clean. I plop it down in my rise bowl, make sure it gets coated in that oil, and then flip it back over. When I have dough that is rising, I usually try to cover it in some plastic wrap, saran wrap, and then I'll put a tea towel over it. Now, you'll want this to rise for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Whenever it's doubled in size is when you know that it's ready. I'll say that I usually let it rise and I'll punch it down, and then I'll put it in the refrigerator for like a day or two. It'll somewhat still rise in the refrigerator, but that time gives it a little bit of time to ferment together, and it makes the best pizza dough crust. But we don't have time for that today. Not for our garlic knots anyway. So we're gonna move this over to the side, let it rise, and then we'll get our portion out for our garlic knots. All right, so it's been about an hour with our pizza dough. We're gonna punch it down a little bit, and I'm just gonna portion out what I need for my garlic knots. All right, I'm gonna try to make mine a little bit uniformed, so I'm gonna weigh mine, and I'm gonna do probably about a 40 or 50 gram sized garlic knot. So we're just gonna start pulling from our dough and measuring it. That's 70 grams. I'm gonna test this out. All right, that is 70 grams. So I'm gonna do 70 grams for my garlic knots. First, we're gonna portion it all out, and then we'll go back and we'll roll it and tie it up. All right, I'm trying to figure out how many I should actually make, because my family alone will go ahead and eat 7 if we all only get 1. So I would say like at least 20 at the least. I mean, I might end up using more pizza dough than what I thought. I mean, I like to eat more than 1 garlic knot. I have them all weighed and portioned out, so now I need to go back and roll them and tie them into a knot, as long as this little girl will allow it. This reminds me of like when we make pretzels, you just roll it out. Once you get it rolled out, you're gonna tie it in, guess what? A knot. Then you got these like extra things here. We're gonna tie another knot. And then you're left with this. All right, put your finished ones on the pan, and I've already got the oven preheating to 450, and once we're all done, we'll pop them in there. Once you have them all tied, then I'm gonna coat mine with some olive oil and pop them in the oven for about 10 to 12 minutes. The real magic comes from the herb butter that we're gonna toss these in. So while they're in the oven, we're gonna get our butter. I'm not measuring this, I'm just kind of doing what I've got. So I'm gonna take a whole stick of butter, and I'm gonna melt this and then add my herbs to it. I've got my big bowl, my melted butter, and I'm gonna go in with my dry seasonings. We're gonna do some parsley, Italian seasoning, Italian herbs, some garlic. Just times that I just don't have time to be cutting up some fresh garlic. And some salt. Stir it up, and we're gonna hurry up and get our fresh garlic knots in here and toss them up. Got another batch to do. I'm gonna dip them all in there individually because I wanna make sure they're coated. And this is the ending product. They're delicious.